Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Welcome to the Tribe Podcast. Tribe is a resource podcast for entrepreneurs looking to build their entrepreneurial tribe. Over my years of working with business owners, I've realized that it's important to know who you need as a part of your network before you need them. Listen in as I ask my trusted resources the question you've always wanted answers to but didn't want to pay to get. If you're new to your business or you're established and you're just busy, feel free to borrow my tribe as you build your empire. Guess what we're going to talk about today? Podcasting. That's right. We're doing a podcast episode with my friend Jordan Gill, who owns a company called Pimp Your Podcast that's all about podcasting. I know, it was a bit much. Okay, podcast episode today is featuring Jordan Gill, owner of Pimp Your Podcast, and we're going to talk about podcasting. Just listen. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We have the pleasure of having Jordan Gill with us today. Yay!
Yay!
And you may have heard her voice before, but we are on today to talk about her, how do I say this? She has a full business where she will pimp your podcast. Jordan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again, Kristen. I clearly love to talk about myself, so here we are.
Well, if you haven't listened to the other episodes quite yet, you should. Two, Jordan has two businesses. One is a systems and automation business, which we talked about, called Systems Save Me. But today we're talking about Pimp Your Podcast. And she just told me that she's been on like 200 podcast episodes, basically. So She kind of knows what's up.
Kind of.
So Jordan, tell us about you and the business where you pimp people's podcasts.
Yes. So, hey again. I run Pimp Your Podcast, which is a podcast management agency, which essentially handles all of the post-production side of podcasts. So not only do we help with editing, but we also help with the show notes and the social media graphics and basically a lot of like the marketing side of podcasting, because a lot of people try to do it all themselves. And again, that's like totally cool, totally fine. People are capable. But for me, when I started my podcast 2.5 years ago, I was like, nope, not doing it. And so I have always had a podcast editor at least, and then show notes and graphics and stuff I also have outsourced. So my agency takes care of all of that so that the podcaster can just really enjoy the process of podcasts, because podcasts are super fun. And hopefully you feel that way as well. So far. And I think a lot of times like the nitty gritty detail stuff like editing and show notes can damper the experience, because it is so tedious and not fun in my personal opinion. So might as well just hand it on over to our team and have us handle it for you.
Okay, so I think a lot of people will be really curious about this, because I'm starting this podcast, of course. It's not something I ever thought I would have done, but when I started reaching out to people about being a guest on the show, they were really curious about it. They were saying, hey, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. Let me know how it goes. You know, most people like to see other people do it or not, and then decide if they should jump in the water. So why you decided to start the business? What kind of got you to that point?
Yeah, so this business is fairly new. So I just started and launched it in August of 2018. And it spawned from, I was in a space of wanting to like essentially be open to invitations that people were sending me. And invitations are really just like things that people ask you, like, oh, like, hey, do you know about this? Or, hey, could you help me with this? Or whatever it was. So I just was in a like 2-week span of just, let me see what invitations I'm getting from people. And podcast stuff was a big one. And I basically wanted to swat all of them away, because I don't feel like I'm the biggest guru of podcasting. You know, there's plenty of people who have way more experience with podcasts, who have been doing them for like 7 or 8 years, who are like making bajillions of dollars off podcasting. So I was like, why don't you just go like over there, like, and take it from that person. And I realized that people honestly really valued my opinion with podcasting, and I made it a lot more realistic for them versus some person who's been doing it forever and is making a bunch of money off of it. It feels unrelatable to take advice from them. So like if you are somebody who feels like you aren't like the top of your industry, just also don't be discouraged by that, because a lot of people do want the relatability of somebody who is maybe just only a few years removed or a year removed or whatever else. So that was something that I kind of learned with that, because I was like, why wouldn't you want to go to like the top person of the industry? Like that just makes sense. And people are like, no, but like one, you're a systems person. And I think that that lends itself a lot of credibility to make podcasting not be as stressful. Because again, if you are doing all the things, it's a lot. And I actually do batch weeks for my podcast, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit. And so podcasting is really not overwhelming at all for me. It's one of the most fun things I do in my business. I look forward to it. And I want more people to feel that way about their podcast, because I know a ton of people who do one season of a podcast, maybe 15 to 20 episodes, and then never do it again. And that just makes me sad, because podcasting is so much fun, and there's different goals you can have with your podcast as far as what you want from it. But yeah, obviously I'm like shouting from the rooftops the amazingness of podcasts.
So I love that you said there's different goals for podcasts, because I don't think people get that. I have a friend who is in the same industry as me, and he mentioned like a lot of people are saying, hey, I love your podcast, but I noticed that you are always uploading it onto Facebook and you don't get a lot of downloads. Is anyone listening to it? And so for him, he really wanted to build himself as an expert in
authority.
Yeah. So for him, he just wants people to listen to it. He doesn't care about being like the top new and cool.
Noteworthy. Mm-hmm.
Right. Noteworthy. I'll learn real words, maybe. So he doesn't really care about being like the top new and noteworthy podcast on iTunes. He just wants to have something to kind of present to the world of like, here, listen to me and my philosophy. So what are some other goals people might have when starting a podcast, and how do you know you're ready to start one?
Yeah. Podcasting, for some reason, people see it very different than blogs and vlogs and all that stuff. It is very similar. I will say that is a long-term strategy. You are not going to make $1 million in a month doing podcasting. So if that was like, a thing.
Cut this off.
Right. Cut the mic. I think that, again, podcasting can have a variety of goals. And one of them being building authority, building credibility, which can lead to speaking engagements. It can lead to clients. It can lead to all sorts of stuff. And if you go into it with the right goals, then I definitely believe that that is achievable. Other goals or ways that people kind of use podcasts is actually to have their guests on the podcast be potential clients versus having authority, experts and stuff like that on the podcast. Really, they're interviewing their clients and building a relationship and using the podcast as a way to essentially warm up their clients. So I've seen that. I've also seen where people want to do like hot seats as a podcast. So they want to showcase their coaching abilities. And so again, the audience is still the clients and whatnot, but also the hot seats is a way that they can essentially like simulate what an actual like coaching experience would be like for them. And a lot other podcasting goals can be money. There is sponsorship. There is other opportunities like having a membership attached to your podcast. I've seen folks who for X amount a month, like you get either like an extra 15 minutes of the podcast that wasn't aired, or the actual guest podcaster will come in and do an extra hour session with the membership community. There's a lot of ways that you can do stuff with memberships specifically and podcasting. So there's lots of money to be made as well there. I know people who do podcasting tours. So if they're in-person people, they literally will do podcasts in like essentially live format. I actually just interviewed somebody for my Pimp Your Podcast show, and he legitimately does podcast tours where he goes to different cities and he sets up shop and rolls through a few different episodes, and people can either come and like be part of like the live like recording, and people can pay to do that. And also, again, he's getting sponsors for those road trips as well, or podcast touring trips or whatever. So podcasts are very flexible. And I think a lot of people just think, oh, podcast, you interview people, the end. And it's like, there's so many flexible ways to use podcasting in your business, whether it's clients, sponsorships, speaking engagements, membership, whatever those goals are for you. And I mean, one of my podcasts has about 140 episodes, and my other podcast has about 30. And, you know, I think that they serve very differently. My 140 episode podcast, that one is interview based, and it is actually really great copy research for me. So when I write copy for my website, when I write copy for different things, like I use the interview copy as inspiration, but it also is I want it to be kind of a library or a resource library of different systems that you can implement in your business. And so it is authority building as well. Then secondly, my Pimp Your Podcast is mainly it's essentially a client warm-up situation. So if somebody's listening to the podcast and they're wanting to start a podcast and they get into it and they're like, this is too much, like I just want somebody else to do it. If they're listening to my show, hopefully I'm top of mind of who they would then call to have actually do their post-production. So they serve kind of two different ways. And my first podcast, like I wouldn't say I get clients from my podcast, but it's again more internally beneficial for me for the copy and stuff.
So if you're sitting here thinking, hey, or driving, wherever you are, and you're thinking, I might want to start a podcast, where's the first place to start?
Totally. Well, you can listen to my podcast, the Pimp Your Podcast Show, but you can also just think of why it is that you want to spend time talking to people. Like essentially that's what it is, whether you're talking into a microphone and talking to your listeners, whether you are talking an interview style, whether you have a co-host, whether you have a panel, like what's so special about your voice? Like what is the listener or the interaction going to benefit? Like what are you trying to get out of it? Which generally is the question you have to ask yourself when you're deciding to do anything. Mm-hmm. And if you feel like the voices in your industry aren't being, I guess, the ones that you would like to hear, or again, you want to build authority, really nailing down why it is you want to start a podcast, because you have to stay, I'm really big with Simon Sinek. I'm really big with being connected with your why. Like your why is everything. And if you don't have a why, bleep hits the fan, like it's going to be really hard.
Family show, Jordan.
Like it's going to be really hard. And so you got to decide and here's the thing. I know plenty of people. I have a good friend of mine, Raina Pomeroy, who just ended her podcast, the Creative Empire podcast. It had over 1 million downloads. It was in 2 years. It did a lot for her and her business, and she just ended it. And people are like, why would you ever do that? Like, it's amazing. And she's like, it just, the why that I originally had for it, it isn't there anymore. And if that's okay, and you can pivot. So again, it can be a short-term why, but just really understanding what your purpose is behind it. If it's just to do another thing, don't start a podcast.
Yeah.
Do it.
It's clear why I feel like.
What is your why?
Thank you. Thanks for asking, Jordan Gill. So I really started this because in the financial planning space, I think what you said about having a voice that's different from the other voices in the industry. I usually work with women who are primary income earners. A lot of times they're entrepreneurs. And for women specifically, but for people in general, we're communal. And a lot of people, I was seeing a lot of clients a few years in the business, and they didn't have any friends in business. And when they had a question, they'd ask a resource, another type of advisor, a CPA, a business coach, or a strategist. Whoever was around, they'd ask a question. They didn't always get the best advice. So I find that for my clients, I'd like to build a resource that podcast may not last forever, but we're building a resource of here are all the people that I know, like, and trust in certain industries. Here's why you should call them and when. So if you're having a problem, you can, one, realize that you're not the only one with this issue, but have an idea of where to go. So
totally.
Obviously to highlight how awesome I am, because I know cool people.
That is a good strategy.
So you mentioned a couple of times, like sometimes people start podcasts, but obviously they end a lot. And sometimes they do like a couple episodes or one season and then they never go back to recording. What keeps people from going back to recording after season one?
Generally, it is misaligned expectations. So again, your podcast is going to be a generally long process. So like in full transparency, my first year of podcasting, I had like 18,000 downloads total. Okay. And I'm not saying that that's like nothing, because it's still 18,000 downloads, but it wasn't a lot in like the podcast realm. But I also, like, when I first started, I probably should have like figured out my why a little bit better, because I like did not market and promote it basically at all. So then my second year, I've had almost 60,000 downloads. So 60,000, 18,000, around 78,000. And that's because I actually like got connected to my why and got actually serious about it and marketed it and connected. And also I just started getting more specific about the guests that I wanted to have on and all that sort of stuff. So I think that people either, they again have expectations that even the first year you're going to get to 1 million downloads. I know a few people that that's happened to, who also like have podcast networks and podcast managers and podcast, like it is a production to get to 1 million downloads in 1 year. You just can't do it alone. So I think a lot of people imagine something different when they start a podcast. And so it's a little bit of like misalignment of expectations, I would probably say. But I think also just it is a lot of work if you are kind of doing it a little more willy-nilly. But if you, again, if you can talk about batching and stuff, like it is, again, not that much of a time commitment for me. And it's also not a big money suck for me, because again, I'm very strategic about my hiring process for it. So I think it's kind of those two things.
So let's talk about batching, because you've mentioned that a couple of times. And I'm batching right now. Feels so cool.
You're so hip.
So cool and like, you know, advanced in podcasting.
Totally.
Tell everyone like what that means and how that would work.
Yeah. So batching essentially is just creating a time constraint and a focus constraint to accomplish your goal. So for example, you can batch writing blog posts. So maybe you decide for 3 hours, you're going to pump out 3 blog posts, and literally all you're doing for those 3 hours is writing. And then maybe you want to batch social media. And so you decide that you're going to sit down for 2 hours. Really, like, batching time frames can be like 2 hours-ish a day to like 6 to 8 hours-ish a day. You can have batch weeks, which I'll kind of talk about, where your focus is just in one place for an entire week. But really, it's, again, just really big focus restraints, and the activity that you're focused on is one thing. So my podcast batch weeks, they've pretty much been, I think a couple times I did 4 days, but the last 2 batch weeks have been 3 days. And all I do is record my podcast. I literally just sit at the mic and talk with people and interview people for about 6 to 7 hours. And it is a lot. However, one, it's super fun because obviously you pick and choose really dope guests. And so it's basically just like a big old gossip fest with everybody. And so, which is fun. And then literally at the end of those 3 days, I have about between, my seasons kind of fluctuate a little bit, but they fluctuate between about 18 podcast episodes to, I think the biggest season I had was about 24. So it's a lot packed into 3 days. But then basically after those 3 days, I hand them off to my podcast editor. He bangs all of those out. And because, again, I'm giving him a big batch, he discounts his rate exponentially so that it's like not super money invasive. And then it goes off to my show notes lady, graphics lady, and then it all goes into my website. And basically before my first episode of that season, everything is done. So for basically 4 to 5 months, my content is totally complete. It goes out on autopilot. I don't have to think about it. but it's going and people feel like, oh my gosh, she produces so much content. Like, how is she keeping up with this? It's like, I did it 3 days in October and 3 days in April. And then like, I basically don't see it again until it pops up into my social media stuff. So it allows for you to essentially check it off your to-do list for a significant amount of time. And that way, again, you can run business as usual and not feel like you're adding so much to your to-do list, because I know I'm not alone when I say I do not like long to-do lists. I do not like to add to them. They are the worst. So if I see on my to-do list like the same tasks over and over again, I basically just reject it and rebel. And I'm like, nope, not going to do it.
Like you're in my mind. Like,
yeah. So that's what batching is. And again, my batching process is, because I'm a systems person, very intense and very, very, very structured. I've done it 6 times. So it's basically like clockwork. So one suggestion that I have for people is, even if you just have like a batch day a month where maybe you get 4 to 5 episodes done for your podcast in one day, you know, to hold you over for a month, like that's winning. And then you could maybe do, you know, 2 batch days every other month. And then, you know, you kind of build from there, because it's really about managing your energy during your batch weeks. Because again, like at the end of each podcast batch day, I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not doing anything. I am worthless, because all of my energy has just gone into talking and being relatable and fun. And then I literally just go and be mute for like the rest of the day, the night. So it can definitely take a toll on your energy. But if you just can focus and get it done, then it's so beneficial.
it seems like that could be applied to anything, though. It's sort of
Totally.
time blocking.
Yes.
Some of you have heard of. I'm thinking about Tim Ferriss' Snap right now. I know he didn't have time blocking, but that's about. So
Yeah.
you could, if you wanted to have, I wouldn't do well with a 1 day a month. It would be one of those things that's regular enough on my calendar that I'd be like, skip.
Yeah.
I could do 2 to 3 times a year, block out 3 or 4 days, and then
Exactly.
work backwards from there, which is what I did for this. And I don't know if Jordan is going to give it to you or if I'm forcing her to give you this freebie, but she's got a really cool freebie on her website that she can talk about that just gives you like the whole process of how to start a podcast, what to do on what day, how to get people on board with being on the podcast. Like if you want to have a podcast, there's really no excuse, because you can either use her template or you can hire her. Done.
Right. Done. Yeah. If you want that checklist, it's at pimpyourpodcast.com/batch. Very easy. Just give me your name and email, and then I will send you the checklist.
Awesome. So I have 2 to 3 questions left. I'm going to give you 2 of them right now. The first one is, how do people make money on podcasts? And the second one is, I was going to ask you to tell me a story. So you can tell me a story, but I also would like a bonus story that has to do with the toilet people.
Okay. So first question, how do you make money on podcasting? So there are a few ways. One, like I mentioned, is sponsorship. Now, you can get sponsorship for a podcast that doesn't exist. And I had a friend of mine, Jerisha Hawk, she has an audience already. And so for her to ask for sponsorship for a brand new project, she had numbers to go off of. So that's like my asterisk, is if you are looking for sponsorship for a brand new podcast, you need to have some sort of substantial audience in other areas, whether it's an email list, Instagram followers, Facebook group, whatever that is for you, wherever your audience is. Like really look at those numbers and decide if you think it can go out to sponsorship. Her numbers, I think we're like 2,500 on email list. I know she's got about 1,000 people in her group, about 6,000 or 7,000 on Instagram following her. So again, they're like, I guess still small numbers, I guess, in the grand scheme of life. And she was still able to get a podcast sponsorship from a software company that she recommends. So there's opportunities there. And really like, don't be looking for like random sponsors when you are, which mine is semi-random, but don't be looking for that. Like look for things like, for example, if you have a podcast that is like about systems, like me talking about like deodorant is like, that doesn't make any sense really. Like we're not this has nothing to do with this. But if I want to have a particular software sponsor my podcast, then that makes sense. And I'm actually in the process of doing that. So really looking at what is your listenership's lives like, and how can I find sponsors that fit into the natural questions that are happening for them anyway, and going forward with sponsorships. And how the sponsorships work is generally people either want to have a pre-roll, which means that it's the very beginning of your podcast, a mid-roll that is in the middle of your podcast, or they're wanting to be in your social graphics and like website, like all of that sort of stuff as well. So those are a few things. And then another way that you can create money with podcasting is, again, the membership. And these are like the major two. There's other ways, but again, that's kind of like different circumstances. A membership that is attached to your podcast is a way that you can make money, whether it's like $27, $99. I've kind of seen all in between there, where people pay for that either extra access to the podcast guests, extra access to the podcast host, like previews of podcasts before they're live. There's just so many different things that you can. Memberships are like a whole beast in itself, but I've seen them be really successful with podcasts because, you know, again, like me and Kristen are like at our respective houses, like talking to each other on a microphone. So when your community is listening to you, like they're listening, and it is a very actually like really intimate, like for people to like have you in their ear.
Right.
But they also then are like, oh, but like if I can get you on Facebook Lives or whatever, or I can meet other people who obviously still like this podcast, that'd be super dope. It's very similar to like, if everybody, you know, if you like the Cowboys and then you like want to meet other people who like the Cowboys, it's like that. Like, oh, I like this podcast. I want to meet other people who like this podcast because I'm sure they're just like me. So anything that's communal based with podcasting works very, very well. So yeah, around those two are the big ones.
One of the biggest hazards of talking to Jordan Gill is you get all these ideas of things that you could do with your business. You're like, how can I create a membership around a podcast that I literally just started? Jordan is the person to blame for this podcast. So if
I'll take it.
To it and you don't like it, you can send Jordan an email.
I'll take it. Do some things.
Put it in the trash system of your email.
Pretty much.
So tell us about toilets.
Oh, yes. So this is probably going to be TMI. So if you get really weirded out by bowel movements, like plug your ears for the next 30 seconds. Oh, so basically I had gotten an email from, you know, I get like pitched like some sponsors every once in a while. I've had like Swedish headphones company reach out and give me free stuff, and like a couple other people that just like weren't good fits, like clothing and things. I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But the most random sponsorship I've ever gotten was for a bidet company to sponsor my podcast. And bidet as in, yes, like the second toilet looking thing when you go to really fancy hotels or Europe. So it's funny because I'm also a really big fan of Poo-Pourri, and I was like, oh my gosh, if Poo-Pourri could be a sponsor, it has nothing to do with systems at all. But me personally, I'm like, yes. And so the bidet just made me laugh. And so I actually, this past season, I did actually bring on the founder just as a guest, because I was like, like probably shouldn't do the bidet as a sponsor, but I'll totally have your founder on as a guest. It was a really cool conversation. She's actually like, I don't know if you're familiar with Thinx, like the underwear. Like she literally was the co-founder of Thinx. And like, I didn't realize kind of actually how big of a deal she was. And then I was researching her a little bit before our recording. I was like, oh, like this is like a big person. Now I'm like freaking out.
An obsession with like bodily waste, I feel like.
I do a little bit. So, and sorry, I'm not sorry about it.
And you must have had so much fun interviewing her.
Yeah. And she owns a gluten-free restaurant in New York City called Wild. So we were talking all about that as well. So she's like a really interesting, it was a really great podcast episode. And so, yeah, like you will get some really interesting sponsor requests that kind of seem out of the blue, but sometimes, and again, like that one I didn't take but I also like made work just because I like appreciated the company and they were super fun and whatever else. So don't feel like you also have to take every opportunity that comes your way. Cause again, once your podcast starts getting traction, you'll get really weird requests from either sponsors or guests or stuff like that. And it's like, no, like I had somebody, a potential guest, ask for me to pay them to be on the podcast.
So they reached out to you and said, hey, I want to be on your podcast. Here's how much it costs for me to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
I was like, it's not really how it works, but thanks again for trying. But also, speaking of like how people make money off podcasts, there are some podcasts that now you have to pay to be on. For example, Entrepreneur on Fire, which is a daily entrepreneurial podcast, like you have to pay him. It's literally a 15-minute interview. He asks you the same 5 questions as everybody else. And I'm pretty sure it's $5,000 if you want to be interviewed. So that's like steep, and he has millions of downloads.
It's marketing for you.
Exactly.
On there, yeah.
It really is a marketing channel, and it's similar to how people do like Oprah's favorite things. Like, you think Oprah's paying for all those gifts that she's sending out? No, like
you can carve.
Right. Like, so there's opportunity there as well. If you want to go that route, like you can, like, it's not that it's not weird to ask like people to pay to be on your podcast, but if you have the audience and the listenership and the people are there, then you can certainly ask your guests to pay you. I can pay you in Starbucks.
I appreciate Starbucks as gifts. I just feel like I'm just happy that people said yes and were excited to be on this podcast and I have people to interview.
That's a good start.
I'll send you my invoice after we get off.
Right. Yes.
So if people want to get a hold of you for either help with podcasts or they want to listen to your podcast, how do they do that?
Totes. So my website is pimpyourpodcast.com, and I have a really cute logo. If for those of you who shout out Pimp My Ride on MTV, it pretty much looks like that. And I am on Instagram, Pimp Your Podcast. I also have a podcast about podcasting for podcasters. Very meta. I love it. It is the Pimp Your Podcast Show, and that can be found on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play Music, Alexa. Oh gosh, I don't even know all the places. So just click it. Yeah, all the interwebs. So yeah, they're available for you as well. And like we mentioned earlier, if you want the batching checklist, you can go to pimpyourpodcast.com/batch, BATCH.
Batch. Learn how to spell it. Well.
Yes.
Thanks for being on the show, Jordan. This has been so fun.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for hanging out with us, and I appreciate you listening to this episode. I would love to get some great feedback from you. Feel free to leave me a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Also, any ideas or want to follow up on anything that happened in this episode, I would love to receive your emails. You can email me at kristen@ashtoncharles.co. Otherwise, I hope this episode has helped you be great in your business.